They laughed behind his back, ridiculed him in whispers, and warned him he was making a mistake. A single white man adopting two black boys? He'll regret it, they said. But years later, when the spotlight shone bright and truth emerged, the ones who mocked him were the ones in shame. The first time Michael Barrett walked into the adoption agency, he didn't expect the room to go silent. He was wearing his usual charcoal gray blazer, his brown hair combed neatly, and his steel blue eyes filled with quiet determination. He was an architect, precise, composed, deeply private. But that day, as he stepped into a room full of expectant families, social workers, and bustling noise, everything paused. Then came the glances, curious, confused, some even condescending. No wedding ring, no partner, just one man, white, single, alone. Michael didn't flinch. He'd prepared for the scrutiny. He had read all the studies, sat through every seminar, completed all the paperwork, and checked every box. But what he hadn't prepared for was how openly society doubted his decision to adopt, especially when he told them he wasn't just looking to adopt a child. He was looking to adopt two. And not just any two. He had read about brothers, black boys who had been in the system for years and were about to be separated. The thought haunted him. The social worker, a tall woman named Janice, tried to keep her face neutral when he first mentioned the brothers, Marcus and Elijah. "They're older," she said slowly, scanning his file. "Marcus is 8. Elijah just turned 6. They've been moved around a lot. Trauma, behavioral issues. Most families aren't equipped." Michael only nodded. "I'd like to meet them." Janice blinked. "Both?" "Yes." She hesitated, tapping her pen against the file. "You do understand, Mr. Barrett. This would be considered a transracial adoption. There are cultural differences, identity development concerns." "I understand," he said gently but firmly. Still, the resistance didn't stop there. During the home study, a younger caseworker had asked bluntly, "Why not adopt a white child? There are infants on the wait list." Michael didn't answer right away. He stared at the peeling edge of his coffee table, running his thumb along the wood grain. Finally, he said, "Because Marcus and Elijah are the ones who need me." It wasn't heroic. It wasn't trendy. He wasn't trying to make a statement. He simply remembered what it was like to feel invisible. Michael had grown up in a military family, always moving, always starting over. His father believed in discipline, not affection. His mother had once told him, "You'll never understand how much we gave up for you." He had learned early to keep his emotions buried, to survive by being invisible. But invisibility, he had learned, could crush a child from the inside out. And when he saw the file with Marcus and Elijah's names, when he saw the note that they were about to be separated because no one wanted to adopt two black boys together, something inside him cracked. He met the boys on a rainy Tuesday in November. The group home was an old converted church building with a sagging porch and bars on the windows. Marcus was seated on the far side of the room, arms crossed tightly, while Elijah clung to a stuffed bear, eyes wary. They didn't speak when Michael entered. "Hi," he said, kneeling slightly. "I'm Michael." Elijah peeked at him through cautious eyes. Marcus stared straight ahead. "I heard you like dinosaurs," Michael said, trying to keep his tone light. No response. "Me too, especially the T-Rex. Mean little guy, huh?" Still silence. But Elijah shifted slightly and Michael caught it, a tiny flicker of interest. They spent 20 minutes together. Michael didn't ask questions. He didn't try to force smiles. He just sat there, telling them about the fossil museum he once visited, how one day he'd love to take his own kids there. Before he left, Elijah reached for his hand. Michael's throat tightened. That single gesture told him everything. The adoption took nearly a year. Endless paperwork, evaluations, background checks, delays. Meanwhile, Marcus and Elijah were shuffled through 2 more temporary homes. The agency warned Michael that their attachment might be disjointed, that Marcus had trust issues, that Elijah was prone to night terrors, that trauma ran deeper than love could reach. Still, he persisted. The day he brought them home, it rained again. Marcus sat stiffly in the back seat, his face blank. Elijah clutched his bear and whispered, "Is this our forever house?" Michael didn't promise them the world. He only said, "Let's make it one day at a time." He had already prepared their room: 2 beds, matching blue quilts, walls lined with posters of rockets and dinosaurs. He cooked spaghetti that night, even though neither of them ate much. Elijah eventually fell asleep on the couch, and Michael carried him upstairs, tucking him in gently. Marcus lay in bed, eyes open, watching. Michael paused in the doorway. "Good night," he said softly. Marcus didn't respond, but his fingers curled tightly around the edge of the blanket. The challenges came quickly. Marcus refused to speak at school. He got into a fight the second week. A teacher pulled Michael aside and asked if maybe the boy needed more structure, maybe a different environment. Elijah cried almost every night. The neighbors whispered, "That white guy with those black kids," as though they were part of a social experiment gone wrong. But Michael didn't waver. He left notes in their lunch boxes, simple messages like, "I'm proud of you. You're not alone." He volunteered at school events, no matter how awkward it felt. He made time for bedtime stories, even when he was drowning in architectural deadlines. He sat through parent-teacher conferences where well-meaning educators asked, "Do you understand how to care for black children?" As if he hadn't been reading, researching, and learning everything he could. The judgment didn't stop in the neighborhood. Church members offered smiles but subtle distance. One woman from his former Bible group said, "I just hope they don't forget where they came from." A former colleague joked, "Trying to win a diversity award?" His mother didn't visit once, claiming she couldn't support something she didn't understand. His father sent a letter. No return address. 3 sentences long. "This isn't what we raised you for. You're embarrassing yourself. Don't contact us again." Michael read the letter once and folded it away. He didn't cry. He just returned to the kitchen and finished helping Elijah with his alphabet puzzle. What he didn't expect was how much the boys changed him. Slowly, subtly, his world began to reshape itself around their presence. He learned how to braid Elijah's hair. He learned to advocate for Marcus when a school administrator accused him of being threatening for standing too close to a white student. He learned to see the world through their eyes, the suspicious glances at the grocery store, the security guard who followed them through the mall, the mother who pulled her daughter away on the playground. And yet, he also learned something else. Love, when persistent, can dismantle walls built over lifetimes. One night, nearly a year into their new life, Marcus knocked on his door. It was almost midnight. Michael sat up. "What's wrong?" Marcus didn't speak for a moment. Then finally he asked, "Can I tell you something? Anything. I don't think I know how to be normal." Michael set aside his book and patted the bed. Marcus sat, eyes down. "I get mad a lot. I don't know why. And sometimes I think, maybe it'd be easier if you gave me back." Michael's throat tightened. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" he asked. Marcus shook his head. "I see someone who's survived things no one should have to. I see someone who protects his brother even when he's scared. I see strength. You're not broken, Marcus. You're healing." Marcus didn't cry, but he leaned, just slightly, against Michael's arm. And in that moment, the house, the judgments, the noise of the world, all faded. By the time the second year came, the family was more than just functional. They were whole, in the way that scars can be whole, visible but no longer bleeding. Elijah won a school art contest. Marcus made the basketball team. Michael helped him practice every night, even when his knees ached and his hands were shaking from too much coffee and too little sleep. Still, outside their home, the whispers hadn't stopped. At a PTA meeting, one parent said quietly, "He's playing at being a savior." At the grocery store, an older man muttered, "You're stealing them from their culture." A viral tweet, someone had snapped a photo of Michael and the boys at a fair, sparked a thread debating the ethics of white saviorism, with hundreds of strangers chiming in. Michael didn't respond. He didn't defend himself. He only kept showing up, day after day, night after night. The real turning point came when tragedy struck. A house across the street caught fire in the middle of the night. The family, a black single mother and her daughter, barely escaped. Michael had been up late drafting blueprints. He was the first to run outside, calling 911, helping the mother wrap her daughter in a blanket. He opened his home to them without hesitation. Marcus and Elijah shared their room. They didn't question it, because by then they understood. Family isn't about biology, it's about showing up when it counts. A local reporter covered the story. The headline read, "Architect helps neighbors escape fire, gives shelter." The photo showed Michael, Marcus, Elijah, and the family sitting together on the front porch. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't flashy, it was real, and it was the beginning of everything changing. By the time Marcus turned 12 and Elijah was 10, the once fractured trio had evolved into a family forged in fire. They still had rough days when Marcus wouldn't talk and Elijah clung to Michael like he was the last person left in the world. But more often than not, there were dinners full of laughter, school projects spread across the kitchen table, and movie nights where Marcus complained about Elijah hogging the popcorn. In the quiet corners of their home, trust was being built, brick by brick, hug by hug, word by word. But the world outside hadn't softened. If anything, it had grown colder, more suspicious. Marcus was growing tall, taller than his classmates, his voice deepening, his shoulders widening. People didn't see a child anymore. They saw something else, a threat, a stereotype, a shadow. It started small, a woman clutching her purse in the elevator when Marcus stepped inside, then a store employee following him through the aisles of a hardware shop. Once, while walking home from basketball practice, Marcus was stopped by a police officer who asked where he was going and why he had a duffel bag. When he said home, the officer didn't believe him until Michael arrived, out of breath and furious. Michael filed a complaint. Nothing came of it. Later that night, Marcus asked quietly, "Was it because I'm black?" Michael hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Elijah, sitting on the couch, looked up sharply. "But that's not fair." "No," Michael said, "it isn't." The next morning, they painted a mural on the backyard fence. An explosion of color, fists raised in unity, faces of black leaders, names written in swirling gold. Marcus chose Malcolm X. Elijah picked Maya Angelou. Michael painted a small heart next to both. News of the mural spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Some praised it, some didn't. A neighbor filed a complaint with the HOA. Michael responded by inviting the entire community to help paint the rest. A few came. Most didn't. But the boys watched him, and something shifted in them. Pride, confidence. That summer, Michael enrolled Marcus in a STEM camp hosted by a local college. On the first day, a volunteer mistook him for a visitor and tried to escort him out. Marcus stood tall, pulled out his registration slip, and said, "I belong here." The director, mortified, offered a private apology. Marcus didn't need it. He came home that night buzzing with excitement. "Dad, they have a 3D printer. We made our own robots today." Michael grinned. "That's awesome. You think I could be an engineer someday?" "I think you can be anything." Marcus beamed, and for the first time, Michael saw the boy fully believe it. But their biggest test wasn't the outside world. It was what came from within. It started with Elijah. Nightmares returned, more vivid than ever. He stopped drawing. He became quiet at school, his teachers concerned. Michael tried everything. Therapy, more one-on-one time, even trips to the lake where Elijah once loved to skip rocks. Nothing worked. One night, Elijah curled up in Michael's lap, far too big for it now, and whispered, "What if my real mom's looking for me?" Michael's heart cracked open. "Elijah, your birth mother. She made the hardest decision of her life. That doesn't mean she didn't love you." "But I don't remember her face," he said, voice trembling. "I don't remember anything. What if I forget you too someday?" Michael hugged him tightly. "You won't, because I'm not going anywhere." Still, the pain lingered. So Michael did what he always did. He showed up. He asked Elijah if he'd like to learn about his heritage, about where he came from. Together, they dove into books, documentaries, music, and stories from Black authors and activists. They attended festivals. Michael found a Black mentor for Elijah, Mr. Carter, a teacher and family friend who spoke with warmth and understanding. Elijah blossomed again, bit by bit, day by day. But just as one fire cooled, another ignited. Marcus had always been quiet, but during his 13th year, something changed. He grew withdrawn, resentful. He questioned everything Michael did. "You don't get it," he'd say. "You'll never get it." When Michael tried to talk, Marcus shut him out. When he insisted, Marcus exploded. "You think you're saving us? You think we owe you something?" Michael stood frozen, the words like knives. "I didn't ask for this," Marcus shouted. "I didn't ask for any of this, and maybe people are right. Maybe this whole thing was a mistake." Michael didn't argue. He didn't yell. He only said, "I love you, Marcus. That hasn't changed, and it won't." Marcus stormed out. He was gone for 4 hours. Michael called everyone he knew. When Marcus finally returned, soaked and shivering, he didn't speak, just climbed the stairs and slammed his door. It took weeks before Marcus spoke more than 2 words to him. Michael gave him space, but not distance. He kept making dinner, attending games, leaving notes. One day, Marcus found a letter taped to his door. "You don't owe me anything, but I will never stop loving you. Not because I saved you, but because you saved me." That night, Marcus came downstairs and sat beside Michael in silence. The TV flickered. Neither spoke. But halfway through the movie, Marcus leaned over and rested his head on Michael's shoulder. It was more than an apology, it was a promise. Meanwhile, Elijah had taken to journaling. He showed Michael pages filled with stories of spaceships, kingdoms, and time travelers who looked like him. One story stood out, a tale of 2 brothers, abandoned in a cold world, who found a guardian in the most unexpected form, a lonely stargazer who built them a new universe. Michael couldn't stop smiling. "You should publish this someday." Elijah shrugged. "Maybe." "I'm serious, people need to hear this." They didn't realize it then, but those stories, those quietly written, beautifully woven pages, would soon become the cornerstone of something far bigger. By the time Marcus turned 14, things had begun to change. Slowly at first, then all at once. A local reporter returned, the same one who covered the house fire years earlier. She wanted to do a follow-up story. "There's something about you 3, she said. "It's more than a feel-good headline." Michael agreed hesitantly. The piece was titled, "More Than a Father, How One Man and 2 Boys Redefined Family." It went viral, not because of Michael's heroism, but because of Marcus's voice. He had given an interview, raw, unfiltered. In it, he said, "I used to think I didn't deserve love. I thought being in foster care meant something was wrong with me. But then this guy showed up, this awkward white dude who couldn't even braid hair right, and he stayed. Every day, he stayed. That's what saved me." The internet exploded. Thousands of comments, messages, shared stories. A movement started under the hashtag, #HeStayed. Families from all over the country began sharing their experiences, adoption stories, reunions, losses, triumphs. And in the middle of it all stood Michael, Marcus, and Elijah, not as symbols, but as survivors, as proof. Of what? That love transcends skin color? That chosen family is just as powerful as blood? Yes, but also that the act of staying, when it's hardest, when it's messy, is more radical than any speech or gesture. Marcus was invited to speak at a youth conference. Elijah's short stories were featured in a digital magazine. Michael got phone calls from people who once mocked him. An old college friend messaged, "I was wrong. You saw something the rest of us couldn't." His father's letter arrived months later. Longer this time. No apology. Just a simple statement. "I watched the interview. I'm proud, even if I don't understand it." Michael didn't know how to respond. Maybe he didn't have to. Because by then something bigger was brewing. A publisher contacted them, interested in compiling their journey into a memoir. Michael declined. "This isn't about me," he said. But Marcus countered, "It's about us. And maybe some other kid out there needs to know he's not alone." They agreed, on one condition. Elijah's stories would be included in full. When the book released, #HeStayed, a family rewritten, it climbed the charts faster than anyone expected. Interviews followed, news segments, podcasts. But more importantly, so did letters. Hundreds. One girl wrote, "I'm black and adopted by white parents. I never saw myself in any book until now." A man said, "Your story made me call my adopted son and say the things I never had the courage to." Teachers used the book in classrooms. Therapists recommended it to clients. And slowly the noise changed. The whispers turned to applause, the mockery to admiration. But none of that mattered as much as the moment one night at dinner when Marcus raised a glass of lemonade and said, "To Dad, for staying." Michael's hands trembled as he clinked his glass, and Elijah smiled, "To us, for becoming." By the time Marcus entered his senior year of high school and Elijah began his first year of high school, the Barrett home had transformed into something more than just a household. It had become a symbol, a gathering place, a story that others leaned on when their own faith faltered. Michael, once the odd single man with the strange idea of raising two black boys alone, was now invited to speak at youth panels, adoption summits, and national conferences. But none of that impressed him, not compared to the things that truly mattered. Marcus had applied to 5 universities, each with full-ride scholarship offers in engineering, including MIT. Elijah had won 2 regional writing contests and was on track to publish his first novella by 16. Their home was filled with trophies, framed art, scattered books, and laughter. The laughter had taken years to build, years of pushing against judgment, fear, and the shadows of the past, but it was real. And it was loud. Still, there were things left unfinished. There was still the neighborhood. Even as praise poured in from strangers around the country, the town Michael had lived in for over a decade, his own community, remained cautious. Polite, yes, but warm, rarely. It was as if the more the world elevated his story, the more some people around him pulled back, feeling as though his rise was an indictment of their silence. That reckoning came unexpectedly. It began with an invitation. The local high school where Marcus was set to graduate decided to host its first ever diversity and inclusion assembly. The principal, under growing pressure from students and staff, asked Marcus to speak. Michael was wary. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," he said. But Marcus shook his head. "I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for the next kid like me." The auditorium was packed. Parents, students, teachers. Some of the same people who had once whispered about Michael sat in the front row, holding programs with Marcus's face printed on the cover. Marcus stepped up to the podium in a navy blazer, his hands steady. He cleared his throat. "I wasn't supposed to be here," he began. "Statistically, I should have dropped out, or ended up in the system until I aged out, or worse." He paused, letting the silence settle. "But someone didn't give up on me. Someone who didn't look like me. Someone who wasn't supposed to be the one. And because of him, because he stayed, I found out what I could be. What we could be." He glanced at Elijah in the crowd, who was beaming.
But this isn't just a story about love or luck. It's a story about what happens when we stop making assumptions.
When we listen. When we choose to believe that people can rise beyond statistics and skin and circumstance. He looked directly at the principal. "You told my dad years ago that maybe I needed a different environment. You were wrong. I didn't need a different environment. I needed someone to believe in me, and now I'm going to MIT." The room burst into applause. Michael sat still, stunned. He hadn't known about that last part of the speech. When it ended, people stood. One by one. Even those who had once looked through them. The woman who used to turn her head in the grocery store. The church members who had distanced themselves. Even the neighbor who had filed the mural complaint. That night, Michael and the boys returned home to find a basket on their porch. Fresh bread, handmade cards, notes from people who once judged them. No signatures. Just words. "I didn't understand before, I do now. Thank you for showing us what love looks like. I was wrong." But the story didn't end with vindication. Because love doesn't seek victory, it seeks continuity. And the next chapter was already writing itself. Months later, Michael received a letter. Official, stamped, government sealed. He opened it slowly. It was from the State Department of Family Services. They wanted to invite him and the boys to participate in a national policy advisory committee focused on improving transracial adoption outcomes. Elijah read the letter and raised an eyebrow. "You're gonna have to wear a tie, huh?" Marcus laughed. "Don't let him pick it. Last time he matched socks and sandals." Michael grinned. "Watch it. I raised both of you. I know all your baby photos." But beneath the jokes was something deeper. A shift. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were shaping the world that had once failed them. During the first committee meeting in D.C., Michael listened as other adoptive parents, social workers, and former foster children spoke about systemic barriers, racism in child services, and cultural erasure. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't begin with stats or stories. He began with silence. "I used to think being a parent was about teaching kids how to live in the world," he finally said. "But my sons taught me how to see the world, and how broken it still is. If we want to fix the system, we need to stop pretending love alone is enough. Love is the foundation, but equity, education, and representation are the bricks." It wasn't a dramatic speech, but the room listened. And later, when Elijah shared one of his stories, a short, piercing piece about a child who waited every night by the door for someone who never came, half the room was in tears. By the end of the year, several policies shifted. Training requirements for adoptive parents expanded. Cultural competency became mandatory. Funding for sibling placements increased. Slowly, change moved. And yet, for Michael, the most powerful moment came in private. He was sitting on the back porch one evening, a cool spring breeze ruffling the edge of the old mural fence. The paint had faded slightly over the years, but the message remained. Marcus stepped out, now nearly grown, voice deeper, shoulders broader. "You know," he said, "I used to hate this fence." Michael looked up. "Yeah?" "Thought it made us stand out, made us a target." Michael nodded. "We were." Marcus shrugged. "Now I think it's the first place I ever felt proud of who I was." He sat beside him. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly, "for all the times I pushed you away, for the things I said." Michael swallowed hard. "You don't have to." "I do," Marcus interrupted, "because if I hadn't let you in, I don't know where I'd be." Michael placed a hand on his son's back. "You don't owe me anything, but I'm grateful every single day." The stars were beginning to peek through the dusk. Elijah joined them, handing out mugs of hot chocolate. "What are we talking about?" he asked. "Growth," Marcus said. Elijah nodded. "Cool. I'm writing a sequel, by the way, same brothers. This time they build a time machine and go back to hug their younger selves." Michael chuckled. "Sounds like a bestseller." "Already is," Elijah grinned, "at least in this house." The following week, a documentary crew arrived. They were producing a film about families who changed national conversations. Michael initially declined. He wasn't interested in being a media symbol, but the boys insisted. "It's not about you," Elijah teased. "It's about all the dads out there scared they won't get it right." The documentary, titled He Stayed, premiered at a national film festival. It won 3 awards. Schools began screening it. Parenting organizations invited them to speak. And in time, more single men of all backgrounds, began exploring adoption. Some reached out directly. Michael kept every letter. But perhaps the most poignant moment came at the final scene of the film. It was simple. No music. Just Michael sitting in front of the mural fence reading a letter. The camera zoomed in. It was from Marcus, handwritten. "Dear Dad, you weren't the father I expected. You were better. You didn't fix me. You didn't rescue me. You just stayed, and because of that I learned how to live. I love you. Marcus." The screen faded to black. In the silence that followed, there wasn't a dry eye in the theater. Back home, as life settled, Michael sometimes caught himself looking back, not out of regret, but disbelief. That he had once been the man mocked, doubted, warned. That the boys who now towered over him were once so small, so hurt. That they had all survived. More than survived. They had become something undeniable. A family. And in the quiet of the night, he sometimes found himself repeating the words that had carried him through every doubt, every judgment, every fear. "I'm not going anywhere." Because he stayed, and the world would never forget it.